Hello there, my name is Christian Roberts, the youth pastor of the Christian Tabernacle Baptist Church in Hamden, Connecticut, and I'd like to welcome you to the Christian Corner. I'm so glad you were able to join us as we begin our brand new series for the month of September, Breaking Point. Before we jump in, I'd like to first take a moment to recognize Suicide Awareness Month. On behalf of Christian Tabernacle Baptist Church and the Christian Corner, I'd like to say that we send our love, support, and prayers to anyone that might be struggling with their mental health. And we want you to know that you are not alone. We grieve with any and everyone watching this video who is grieving someone that they love who has committed suicide. And to anyone watching who has ever contemplated or attempted suicide, we want you to know that you are loved, valued, that you make a difference, and we are so glad that you are still with us. As we begin today, things will be a little bit different from usual. In light of the racial injustices taking place all over the country, rather than simply giving a message, today I will actually be engaging in discussion with two people who I actually work with at Christian Tab who help me make all the content here for the Christian Corner. And those people are Ricquel Platt and Kyle Jones, as well as my good friend Queen Jonafa Tervalons. So, let's chat. All right, I'm here with Kyle, Ricquel, and Queen for our discussion today. Hey all, how are you doing?
Doing
Going
well.
on.
Great. So as we jump in today, let me ask you all, what have been some of the emotions that you all have felt in light of the recent events of the shootings of Jacob Blake, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and so many others, and what's been said and talked about on social media, on the news, etc.? What have been some of the things that you have felt with that?
I'm gonna be honest. I am beyond frustrated and over it. To the point where I try to avoid media outlets because I feel like at this point the media kind of antagonizes. The sound bites you get, the stories that get run are always the most controversial. They find the people that make the most ignorant statements. I stay away from media threads because I've realized a long time ago, I am a proud Black man. And it pains me to my soul to see what my people are going through. And so I don't intentionally incite my rage. I feel like at this point, I don't want to continue to focus on the problem. I want to focus on solutions. But I think we as a people don't really know how to pursue solutions. And then there's these different sect of people, some who just want chaos, some who just want revenge, and nobody's really communicating amongst each other to really figure out what solutions are. And so I sympathize with the families. I internalize their pain. I feel it. I've lost friends to the streets, so I know it can't be a good thing to endure, especially under the circumstances. But I try to steer clear for my own mental health purposes.
Cal, I'm gonna jump on that. I'm the kind of the same way. I try to, like I hear it. It's a part, I guess, rage, not rage, but some form of frustration, some form of anxiety. Just because with me, I'm an educator. So I see these kids. I work with these kids. You know, I build these relationships with these kids. I see the innocence of these kids, but I also see how the system try to set up these kids. So my thing is, it comes with a lot of anxiety, because I don't know, like, I'm scared for my boys that go out, or I see my boys and, you know, there's trauma there. There's, you know, there's something at the root of that problem, but people, they're a black boy, they label them, they have this stereotype. And then I feel like they're put, what am I trying to say? It's like they're trying to set them up. And I see it in the classroom at age, you know, 10 and 12. And then, you know, it's fearful. It's frightful. You know, because I don't want to see my kids on the news one day, or read about my kids, which I have read about them. And I have, you know, heard or lost students to, you know, different gun violence or innocent students. So it brings some frustration. And it's like, enough is enough. And it's like, we're talking, we're marching, we're doing these things, but what is it going to take for people to understand that we just want to live? We just want a shot. We just trying to do what everybody else trying to do, you know? But what make us, why, and I guess this is the frustrating part with me, why us? Why always us, you know? And that I guess that's me, just frustrated. Just real frustrated.
For me, I'm located in the New Orleans area, and just gun violence in general is just a problem. In all forms of it, all perpetrators, all of that is really an issue here. And also, like, in the midst of literally like COVID, you know, the uncertainties that COVID has brought on is just really scary. For me, I felt at first, like the beginning of the summer, like, I had a inkling of hope, because like people were, you know, oh, defund police, like the protest has been really strong and they've been long lasting. Like, I think this is probably the longest lasting, like, and consistent, like, protests have been in some years. So that's, you know, things like that. It's like, okay, well, maybe something's about to happen. But then at the same time, it's like, of course, like, it just keeps happening again and again. So I think that I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to try to think, what is the options outside of what we have now? Like, I feel like maybe this is the time for new creation, because really when stuff is hitting the fan and there's nothing else to do, like, you're back against a wall, that's when you literally have to create something new. And so I'm just wondering, what new something is about to emerge from this, because literally what we have now is just not effective. Like, protesting, all these things are not loud enough, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's very frustrating, as everyone else said. So I want to contribute to the solution, so I'm in the midst of doing that, but I'm just so emotionally sensitive right now, because there's also been a lot. I've experienced death to me, close to my family, and yeah, so it's very, very much tiring. I'm emotionally tired.
It's overkill. It's oversaturation. It is to the point where it's like, when you hear it, you're almost like, okay, enough. And that's a bad place to be.
Yeah, I echo all of what has been said, particularly what Kyle talked about with even the media response, with the social media, just with all the opinions that are being put out there, all the discussion, the back and forth, even with opinions that I agree with. It's just so tiring to go through this process, to cycle over and over and over again and get to it, and, you know, even have these inklings of hope, like we talked about, when maybe a white coworker or contemporary says something like, hey, I never realized this, or hey, I see the problem, only to find ourselves back in this place again and again. So I think that for me has been an emotion. I felt like almost a numbness, you know? So, yeah. So kind of going from that, let me ask this question. What specifically, if you were to identify one thing, has been the most difficult part about all of what's been happening across the country?
Lack of response. You know what? No, I take that back. What has been the most frustrating is the for lack of a better term, the ignorant, the vitriolic response from our people. I what is the word? I despise people who speak without thinking because they can incite things. When the riots started, when the protests started, let me say that, people fail to realize that there are a number of kinds of people, but amongst the kinds of people that we deal with, there are anarchists. And so there are people, oh yeah, burn it down. But I'm like, that's not bringing anybody back, and that's not affecting change. And what it does do is it exposes us and opens us up for more violence, because now you're overshadowing what the actual issue is. And so you got people, oh yeah, like you're not thinking about the bigger picture. You know, there's people, oh, it's time to go to war with the police. Really? Are you ready for war? You know what I mean? Like, let's think about this logically. Let's think about solutions. Let's not operate from emotions, because at the end of the day, you incite, there's somebody who's had enough, who's willing to take these suggestions. There's always somebody crazy enough in the crowd to go to the farthest extreme. And what that does is it exposes all of us to more violence, and it really solves nothing. What we should be looking at is real responses. Like, you know, people are saying defund the police. Okay, but how does that roll out? What does that look like? Do you lessen the force? Do you not give them the resources they need to actually do their job? Because what a lot of people don't want to realize is this is a very complicated subject, and police actually do a lot of good work. Just the idea of police keeps us from being in a perpetual state of purge, right? So if we're going to defund the police, if we're going to minimize their force, then that means we need to step up. And this is something we need to do anyway. We need to police ourselves. Like Queen acknowledged, gun violence in general is an issue. And I know people hate to discuss it, but at the end of the day, I struggle with the idea that you're upset that a white man killed a black man, but then you got the t-shirt saying free so-and-so when he killed a black man. That is a discussion to be had. And the truth of the matter is, if we held ourselves accountable and if we showed that we valued our lives, then our screams of Black Lives Matter resound all the more. Because then there's no defense to say, oh, what about black on black crime? You take that off the table.
That happened to me yesterday, actually. Someone said that to me yesterday, and we was having a conversation, and she was saying, but, you know, I marched, and she was telling me how she marched in the 60s, right? And then she was like, yeah, and my brother and I, you know, my parents didn't raise us that way, but my brother, he voted for, you know, she went into who her brother voted for Trump. And then she says, and we go back and forth, and he says, well, they do it to themselves. And that's the comment. And I'm looking at her like, that doesn't make it okay. But then when I think about it, like, just like you said, we need to hold each other accountable. We can't say, we want this police officer to get this, and this because he, killed someone, and we're wearing the free so-and-so t-shirts like you just said.
We got 30 unsolved murders in our own neighborhood, and 50% of the people know who did it, and won't nobody say nothing.
Right.
It's frustrating. And I think what we need to do is focus on solutions and not the problem. We know what the problem is.
Right.
And what I also hate is when we have, like, say we have a recent shooting, then comes the flood of all the previous shootings, all the old shootings, all the shootings you didn't see before. What that does is that evokes an emotional response. It does something to you, and it kind of directs your focus, your passion, your rage, whatever you want to call it, and it creates a social divide. There's no demographic of people who are all good or all evil, and that's what we have to recognize. In every walk of life, you come across everything that's possible to be out there, and we have to learn how to sift through it, unfortunately, and find the good and tether the good together and work towards positive change. And if we're not working towards change, if we're not looking for solutions, all we're doing is running around the same tree over and over. And it's tiresome. It's tiresome. It really is.
For me, for one, answer the question, I think the hardest thing is like the blame game without it matching, like, well, let me just fix it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, there's so, it's this is the problem, this is the problem, this is the problem. Like recognizing the problem, but not matching that with creating a solution. Like, we know this is an issue, so this is what we're gonna do to try it. I feel like what we have to do is try things out. Like, some of the methods that people use may fail, but at the same time, it's a option. Like, everybody already knows what we have now isn't working, and a lot of people want to over critique the solutions that people do come up with. But it's like, well, dang, well, when you tried it, did it work out? But you didn't even try it, so you can't even say whether or not this is helping. So I think that everyone knows the problems, everyone knows the issues, but people want to over critique the solutions to where we're not even to the point where we can try them out. And so I think that's probably the biggest issue that's happening, is because like American culture doesn't allow for mistakes to happen. Like, they want to intellectualize it before you can make the mistake. But I think for me, what I've been just observing, especially like trying to understand this through a Christian lens, like that's been the hardest part. I'm not upset at the rioters, people who are considered rioters. I'm not upset at protests. I'm not upset with violence that happened as a result of the injustice that we've been experiencing. Just because, like, for one, violence happens to us all the time, and violence is going to come regardless, whether it's our neighbor or whether it's whoever the other is. So violence is going to come regardless, is a part of the human experience. And I'm not going to, I think there could be better ways to do it. But like, even in my daily life, like, I've hit my sister before growing up. Like, people, violence happens, is part of our human response. So it's like, okay, why are they being violent? Let's start there. Why are they being violent? And how can we decrease the likelihood of them being violent as a result of why they're being violent to begin with? And for me, I'm not mad at them. I'm not mad at people burning stuff down, just because it's a method of trying to get their voices heard, because peaceful protest hasn't been the most effective, hasn't been the 100% most effective way. So it's like, okay, we need peaceful protests. Somebody needs to burn something down, and like, it's trying out different things. So I'm definitely not opposed to it. It's not something I would participate in, but I can't get mad at someone for acting out on their emotional thing, because emotions is a part of the human experience. And like, even for myself, like, we ask for forgiveness for the things that we've done, and it may not look the same, but I can't sit here and call somebody like wrong because they acted differently than me if I don't understand like where they're coming from. So I think that's also showing compassion to people who are different. I think that's also important.
Yeah, I think for me, it's twofold. On one level, I think the amount of what I call counter criticism regarding these issues is very infuriating. When people are outraged about lives being lost, when people are outraged about, a lack of convictions, a lack of people being charged, a lack of justice for those lives being lost, and the response is, well, we kill each other. And the response is, well, all cops are bad cops. And we're trying to critique things, and we're trying to respond with these counter arguments instead of dealing with the emotion, the genuine pain that's being felt. It's unchristlike, it's illogical, it doesn't fix anything. And people can never see that. People can't see how their responses really throw fuel onto the flame, how there's just a lack of compassion. You see what I'm saying? There's no compassion for people who are grieving. There's no compassion for people who are confused, who are outraged, who just have this weight of not knowing if they're next, of seeing this happen in their own communities, and people are not responded to in so many cases with love, even if we don't see it the same way, even if we may have a different view or take on the issue as a whole. We can't agree that, hey, someone who's feeling afraid, somebody who's feeling frustrated needs to be met with love, with compassion, with understanding, and not with trying to shut them down. That's the first thing that I wish was different, that I think makes this so much harder to deal with. And also, it's the realization for me as someone who's gotten deeper in ministry, who's gotten deeper involved at school, that, a lot of our institutions that should be contributing to change and progress have failed. as a church, as educational systems, we have failed. When you raise kids from K through 12 and we can't instill in them that Black lives matter, that people should be treated with dignity and respect and love, regardless of the color of skin, when we can't do that for 18 years, there's a problem. When we as churches, particularly some of these bigger churches, have resources and a platform, and you fail to speak out, and then the killer is, okay, when these shootings go down, you take one Sunday and you have a conversation, you have a panel, you preach a sermon to address it, and then you go right back to what you've been doing the rest of the year. Okay. That's a problem, and I think we have to acknowledge that churches and educational systems and families and communities have been complicit, and we have not done enough. We have not done enough to fight for change. And I think that failure, it stings, particularly because there's a level of accountability there, because we look to these people to really be the difference makers in our community. And in that regard, we have not succeeded. So kind of moving from that, how has God spoken to you individually about how to think about and respond to the racial injustice in our country?
So I've been praying about this a lot. And it is a tough situation. Like she said, violence is a part of our DNA, right? And so it's not a matter of trying to get away from violence. It is the intention behind the violence, right? A man wants to rob another man because he's trying to feed his family. You understand? Okay, bad choice, but he probably had found himself in a position where he felt like he had no other choice and it was desperation, right? Versus, I don't like this person because of the color of their skin. I think they're less than me. You know what I'm saying? It's a matter of survival versus just ignorant choices. And so I think one of the things we need to do, and I strongly believe that police need to be trained better, but I think that we need to police the police. We need to make sure that they're held accountable. And to keep the slate clean, we need to hold ourselves accountable, because what ends up happening, one of the biggest strategies in the courtroom, if you want to win a case, you discredit the witness, right? You discredit the witness, then they could have been privy to the entire event and their testimony amounts to nothing because you have discredited them. And they could tell 100% the truth, this man is guilty, it doesn't matter, right? So we need to be credible witnesses when we hold the police accountable. I think also we need to focus on developing a financial infrastructure for our people, one that affords us the amenities that we don't have. I find it very complicated to find yourself independent when you always have to have your hand out. And I think if you level the playing field, if you amass the resources necessary to balance the scales, you by default force them to respect you a little bit more. There's a saying, and so I'm kind of going to echo Queen when it comes to the violence thing. I would prefer not to be violent, but the saying goes, a man cannot truly know peace until he knows war. And I think that's one of the most profound sayings. And it basically says you must be able to defend yourself. You must be able to wage war if you want peace, because in that ability, your opponent is forced to respect your power, your position, your potential, right? Because now it's not to say that you'll be undefeated, but it's to say, if I have an issue with Christian, but I know Christian has enough power to stop me, even though I have power to stop him, it would make me think twice about if I want to engage him, or amicable way to figure out what our differences are. And I think we as Black people don't have enough footing on solid ground to garner that type of respect. And so as it stands, they shoot us, they kill us, they choke us, they kneel on us. They've killed us in a number of ways and have yet to be, even prosecuted, let alone convicted. I mean, we're not even getting them in the courtroom at this point. Breonna Taylor's murderers haven't even been arrested, approached, and it's blatant. It's in your face, which ensues so many emotions. But I think those are the first steps that we need to take to even the playing field a bit.
One of the most important things to note, I think, is this Black Lives Matter statement. I think, you know, it becomes desensitized, like people become desensitized to hearing it, and I very much agree. Like, the issue isn't the statement. The issue is the fact that we have to say the statement to begin with. Our being, like, it doesn't matter if we're poor, broke, gay, a convicted felon, doesn't matter, none of that matters. But our just because we're a human, we deserve respect. It don't matter what our income level is, education level is, all of that doesn't matter. The fact that I'm breathing, the fact that someone's breathing, garners them respect. And so it doesn't matter all the respectability of, you know, like I seen like a sign that was like, I'm a PhD student, and no, he said, I think he was like in law school or something. It was like this Black man. He was like, I'm a lawyer, all this kind of stuff, and you know, I still deserve respect. But it's like all your credentials don't matter. Like that's, I think that is a cultural issue too, because I know even for myself, like I've struggled with, like I grew up low income, but then it's like lower income than me, like for a person who is houseless or homeless, it's like I know for me, like I've wanted more separation. Like I felt too guilty for looking at people, so I would rather not look at some homeless people. That's like growing up. It was like I felt so bad that I was like, I just wish that they weren't so, like, you know, on the street light next to the stoplight. I just wish they weren't there because it makes me feel guilty. But it's like their beinghood shouldn't bother me at all. And I think those uncomfortable questions and truths are part of the issue. So I would like to evaluate myself, and then also like just as a culture, like just do a lot of self-reflecting on how is it, like all the different reasons why these people quote unquote don't matter is an issue. Like being Black is not an issue. The fact is there's white people killing us for being Black. Two, there's people in America, people kill other people in general or be violent towards other people. Like all these issues are like more core issues than like just, you know, police brutality. It's like, but police brutality met with no convictions, just like you said, met with repeated instances, met with it's happening in every city across the city. Like it's just all of that. So that's why for me, I started a blog to try to analyze those inner thoughts. So for me, like what defunding the police, like it seems like something that is far from reach. Like, oh, we can't do that. Like it's wrong. You know, we need it. And then I thought about it, was like police really come on the after effect. So it's like crime is going to happen regardless, and they know it, and that's why they have a job. And then they come in afterwards to, you know, pick things up. But the issue, like we defund the police, the crime's still gonna happen, maybe at the same rate. It may be, you know, it may be a little higher, but crime happens regardless with the police. So obviously police don't stop crime. So let's start there. So what's the issue? Why are people doing crime? So is the survival, you know, what is that? So it's like, we need to have root cause. We need to look at the root of issues. Why are people being violent toward each other? Do our schools teach you not nonviolence, but it's anti-violence? Do schools teach that? No. So it's like, how do we expect people to be nonviolent or, you know, not violent if we don't have systems to fix that? And it's like, but that will fix root issues. How is money playing a part in people's violence levels? How is power playing a part of it? Psychologically, how can we prevent people from being power hungry to feeling like they're above someone else enough to kill them? Those deeper things and questions, I feel like, is what some of the solutions come from. So that's prayerfully, I've been trying to figure out how can I contribute to those things. So I've been analyzing myself and how, like, the things I'm uncomfortable with, like, why do I feel this way when this person approaches me? And I start trying to analyze that. So that's why my blog, I started it. So my blog is to look at some of the root issues of why these things happen.
Yeah, I think one thing that I really felt in meditation was, one, the importance of stillness. When we get caught up in the traffic of all the voices, all the news, just always having to react to anything, I found it hard to really hear from God. I had to step back and say, you know what, God, I'm not in a hurry to respond. I'm not in a hurry to give an opinion. I'm not in a hurry to react or do something. I want to really hear from you and be guided by you, because I know that when that happens, you know, when I have that stillness, when I know that you're God, when I allow you to guide my steps and order my steps and direct my path, then I can make the difference that you want me to make. That was the big thing for me, because for me, with the emotion, with just the need to, I have so much built up, I wanted to just let it out. But I really felt God holding me. And then looking back, I was like, because I allowed God to kind of work on me in those moments, I was able to make a bigger difference later, particularly talking and working with a white church and white students who were, for the first time, starting to realize the importance of racial justice and be able to contribute to that. But if I didn't open myself up to what God wanted me to do, I would have never had that experience. So what are some practical ways that you believe that we can contribute to change in racial justice in our community? What are some small, everyday things that we can do to help make a difference?
I think awareness is one. Raise awareness on both sides. And I think really for the youth, one of the key components to just overall improvement is really instilling the value of life. I think that's one of the most fleeting characteristics of society in general. And there's a number of factors that contributed to it, but we become so accustomed to death. When I was young, for whatever reason, man, if someone died, it was the most devastating thing. Like the day would stop, life would slow down, people would take time to reflect. And it's like we've gotten into such a pace in life that when people die, you know, you don't miss a beat in life. You know, life goes on, man, that's crazy. And it's because it's oversaturation. People get shot and you become desensitized. Like, wow, that's crazy, another one dead. Wow, yo, you see the game last week? It's so commonplace that it has lost the effects, the vitriolic effect on your emotional stance. We're damaged people as a society. And I think that's one of the things that makes it such commonplace, that makes it so easy. And it's so easy for humans to take another human life. We don't value human life. And I think to address that would be a strong beginning to reestablishing and combating the issues that we are facing in general.
Another thing, I feel like we should continue to talk about it. And I know people saying we're talking about it, but actually, I feel like sometimes when we don't talk about us or to other people or to, you know, we have to educate others as well as educate ourselves. We need to, you know, continue to speak about it, continue to educate our coworkers or the people that we come in, you know, in contact with. Also, I feel like we need to foster empathy and, you know, have empathy and for each other. And you were talking about we don't respect lives, but I feel like we're selfish, and it's sometimes it's about us, and we don't care about the others, and that leads me to building up our community. And if like, yeah, like you said, the defense mechanism where people, you know, play the blame game, or they say you're doing this to your own community, we need to scratch that, and we need to take pride in our community, and we need to protect our community. And so that's one thing I feel like as our culture, the Black culture, is we need to, you know, go back to that village and that family. And it's not about you over there and your family over there and this, and our young people getting mad. Like, I lost my brother to gun violence. He was shot. So it's like, you know, people getting mad and taking it out on people. Like you said, it's a life. That's not only a life, but a generations. That's generations that are taken away. So just, you know, bringing it back to the community and coming together and continue to talking about it.
I would sum it up in one sentence. I would say that everyone should be loyal to the world that we want to live in. And I think that would solve a lot of things, because I think that we are inherently good people. So we want to live in a better world, whatever that may be. And I do think that we have the ability to commit to that. But if we are loyal and committed to the world that we want to live in, then things will be different on a personal level, which is where it starts. On a spiritual level, it starts there, and then on a personal level, and then on a community level, and then on the outside of our community level.
Yes, to kind of give a concise way to really put a practical step, I would say that we can't change what we want to engage. If we aren't willing to really take on these issues and reflect about how we contribute to the problem, what we can do to create solutions, if we're not invested in constantly reflecting on how God wants us to engage, how God wants us to interact, and how God wants us to work towards progress, we're not really willing to ask those difficult questions, to have those difficult conversations, to really be honest with ourselves, we cannot make a difference. So in closing, what would you all say to those who are struggling with their faith in the midst of the current social, political climate, who feel afraid, who feel frustrated, who feel weary? What would you say to them?
I would say to take that alone time when you have those feelings of anxiety or those feelings of frustrations. Take that alone time to sit, to think, to meditate, to talk to God, but time to actually listen and wait for God to direct your path or tell you where to go. It gets really frustrating. And Queen said it earlier, you know, the Christian thing to do. But just, I would say, you know, when you get in those times, just, you know, try to get closer to God and try to read the word. And if it's confusing, pray about the word and say, God, what does this mean? Reveal this meaning to me. But just having that alone time with him too.
I'd say just remember that the house built on the rock, it endures the same storm as the house built on the sand. The difference is one will be standing when it's over. Try to lean into the Lord and trust that he got you. And it doesn't say that everything is going to be peaches and cream. I think that example of the house on the rock versus the house on the sand is the most profound in the Bible, because nowhere does it say that one house would endure a storm while the other wouldn't. It's literally the exact same storm. And the difference is one is fortified and has enough to withstand it. It's not saying that the house won't be the damage that will be incurred, but at the end of the day, the house will not fall. And so when in these struggling times, in these rough times, rest in the Lord. And I know it sounds cliche, obviously it's easier said than done, but there is a sense of peace that you get when you rely on the Lord and you allow him to deal with the bigger issues. When you know that someone else is taking care of it, or that someone else is going to be concerned about it, and you don't overstress about it, you find the clarity to see those opportunities, to see those silver linings. So yeah, just lean into the Lord. Build your house on the rock. There's no other way to go.
If someone is struggling with their faith, I would say to get real quiet and think about all the things inside of, literally just everything you're thinking about and feel all of the emotions you're feeling, all the thoughts that you're having, and all the questions that you have, and be clear with whatever that is. Get clear with yourself on why you're struggling with your faith. You may not feel close to God. You may not feel like you have a connection, all that kind of stuff. But it starts with getting clear with yourself. And then what are the things that you want to see? What are the things you need to see? And understand that clear distinction. Like, what are you looking for? What do you need? What do you want? I think that clarity within self is really important. And then finally, I would say that sometimes people question their faith because they experience a great deal of pain. And I've done it. But one thing that really changed how I see life in general is that life comes with pain. The good things that I want to see in the world is going to come with struggle, is going to come with pain, is going to come with hurt. I'm not going to understand it all, but I'm getting to the point where I try to learn from the pain that I have. So it's like, what can this teach me, or how did I change as a result of the pain? Like, did I change for the better, for the worse? It's like, pain is really like a teacher that sucks. It really sucks, but it's really like a teacher. And sometimes the lessons are gonna be missed, but like, I'm not trying to, like, a relationship with God is not to not have pain anymore. I think it's important to like realize that like life is going to come with the pain, but it's just like how you allow the pain to influence your life, I think, is the part where you can get on the better side of it. So and being okay with leaning into the pain too. Like, it's gonna suck, and it's like, well, just feel sucky for a while, and until you get to a point where it's a little better. So
Yes, I would definitely say trust your process. It's okay not to have an answer. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to be mad at God. Whatever those feelings are, trust your process. Trust those emotions. Allow God to work through what you're feeling. And last thing I'd say is to invest your energy carefully. Be mindful of what you're spending your time with, what you're spending your energy with. Constantly ask yourself if the conversations you're having, if the responses you're giving, if the course of actions you're taking are helping lead us closer to progress that God wants us to make. Philippians 4:8 says, whatsoever things are good, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, think on these things. Spend your energy, spend your time on the things that allow God to work through you in the biggest way. So we thank everyone so much for being part of this discussion, and we hope that those who are watching have an idea, have something as we move forward to build upon, to think on, to reflect on, and to help make that change in your community. Thank you. Hello there, my name is Christian Roberts, the youth pastor of the Christian Tabernacle Baptist Church in Hamden, Connecticut. And I'd like to welcome you to the Christian Corner. I'm so glad you were able to join us as we begin our brand new series for the month of September, Breaking Point. Before we jump in, I'd like to first take a moment to recognize Suicide Awareness Month. On behalf of Christian Tabernacle Baptist Church and the Christian Corner, I'd like to say that we send our love, support, and prayers to anyone that might be struggling with their mental health. And we want you to know that you are not alone. We grieve with any and everyone watching this video who is grieving someone that they love who has committed suicide. And to anyone watching who has ever contemplated or attempted suicide, we want you to know that you are loved, valued, that you make a difference, and we are so glad that you are still with us. As we begin today, things will be a little bit different from usual. In light of the racial injustices taking place all over the country, rather than simply giving a message, today I will actually be engaging in discussion with two people who I actually work with at Christian Tab, who help me make all the content here for the Christian Corner. And those people are Ricquel Platt and Kyle Jones, as well as my good friend, Queen Jonafa Tervalons. So, let's chat.